Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist. I am the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I am also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO of Pro Audio Voices, providing audiobook and podcasting production, distribution, and marketing. And I'm so excited to have with me today Sheldon Collins, author of The Legend of Valentine, and also Lee Holden, Qi Gong master and author of several books, including the just-released Ready, Set, Slow. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you very much. Also great to be here. Very excited to be here.
Yeah. Sheldon, let's start off with maybe you can set the stage for us. I know you two have a history together, so let's start there. Like when and where, how did you two first connect?
Well, I met Lee actually originally through his brother, who is also a great friend of mine. And we went to college together. And then Lee and I met through Shane, his brother. And in regards to kind of getting the wheels turning on The Legend of Valentine, Lee had written a first draft on The Legend of Valentine. Gosh, almost, what has it been now, Lee? Almost like 20 plus years ago or something.
It's gotta be. Yeah, exactly.
And he got things off to a great start. As many people know, there's many iterations of The Legend of Valentine, just like there's many iterations of Robin Hood stories. And it was really cool, number one, because he identified these different legends and came up with his version of it about 20 years ago. But also, moreover, because Lee is a healer himself and was a healer at that time. And so there was a lot of things that he related to the story of Valentine. And that might be a good segue for me to just pass it over to you, Lee, and kind of talk to you, let you fill the audience in terms of the inspiration originally, where it came from and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there I was studying for my state board acupuncture finals, and I was blurry eyed and like tired of studying herbs and whatnot. And it must have been like early February because I picked up a magazine article on the life and history of Saint Valentine, and I started reading it and it sucked me in. And I was like, why isn't there a movie about this guy? It's so fascinating. Yeah. Why isn't there a book about this? And so I was like, gosh, how do you write a screenplay? How do you do? And I just got inspired and excited about the whole concept because I was studying Chinese medicine. It seemed like there was a lot of correlations between Chinese medicine, healing, herbal medicine, and this ancient mystic who was Saint Valentine, who I didn't know very much about. And I felt like most people don't know very much about. And it's an extremely fascinating story.
Right. Yeah. And I was at that time in the midst of working on a bunch of other creative projects as a screenwriter and director. And Lee and I worked out a deal at that time. And, from there, I kept going with the screenplay with another writing partner at the time. And we got very close to getting it made. And then eventually I circled back to it now and wrote it as a book. But it was just everything, looking back, it was just so cool having a healer like Lee bring all the authenticity and connections to that character that's in the story, and also bring in some elements that was in the original draft of this idea of bringing some of the Eastern medicine, whether, Qi Gong or it had ended up being Ayurvedic medicine that we talk about in the story, and how that kind of played a part in the Roman Empire. So, and maybe you could talk a little bit about everything that you're doing now versus back then, and that connection.
Yeah, I've taken the ball and ran with it. I've had some healing arts clinics, both working with integrative medicine and Qigong and Chinese medicine as a doctor of Chinese medicine. And now really what I do is I do online education for movement practices that are based in Chinese medicine, Tai Chi, Qi Gong, meditation, energy work, breath work, all those kinds of things. And these ancient practices, I love to make them relevant for modern times. And I felt like there was such a deep connection to Chinese medicine. And, when I visualized what Valentine's life must have been like, I brought in a lot of Chinese medicine or ancient healing medicine, holistic medicine that might have been relevant at his time. And I love creating these bridges of modern life and ancient practices, making those ancient practices accessible to people in modern life and improving their lives. Because yes, modern life's incredible, and with all of its technology and technological advances, but there's something to this ancient wisdom that helps to benefit modern life so tremendously much, because we're out of balance. There's so much technology that we become out of balance. We're disconnected from nature. We're disconnected from each other. We have more anxiety, stress, insomnia, depression than we have ever before. Even though our smartphones are getting smarter, we're not getting more emotionally intelligent. And I love to just create this bridge and complementary type of medicine. And what better way to do that than through an incredible story like Valentine's life?
Yeah, and I love how we're going to be talking more about this bridge and this connection with ancient healing techniques, because so many people, I think, have this idea that these are new age things. That they don't realize just how these have been with us for not just decades, but centuries.
Yeah, I know. Modern medicine's only 200 years old, where Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine is some 5,000 years old, at least in its written recordings. And when you look at the life of Valentine, that is some thousands of years old, there was so much trade and connection between the Roman Empire and the East. And so I just found that fascinating. I mean, nobody really knows exactly what Valentine experienced or learned, but I imagine there was some way, shape, or form that he became this incredible healer in his own right through these maybe ancient practices.
Yeah. And, one of as you both know, but one of the things for our listeners, that one of the techniques is that you've mentioned a couple of times, Qi Gong plays quite a significant part of the story in certain ways with Valentine. Just to make sure that all of our listeners actually know what Qi Gong is, what it means, would you enlighten us?
That is a good question, because people don't necessarily know what Qigong is. It's a term that's kind of on the rise. Other terms that are similar, yoga is quite popular. Everybody knows what yoga is, mindfulness, breath work, and even Tai Chi. And I often like to say that if yoga and Tai Chi had a baby, it would be Qigong. And there's, in Qigong, there's breath work, there's moving meditation, there's flowing exercises, there's stretching. Qi means energy. It's life force energy. And Gong means work. So it's the original energy work practices. And I don't know if you guys know this, but there's over 3,000 styles of Qigong. Tai Chi would be one of those styles of Qigong. Qigong is the most ancient form of exercise that is written and recorded, and it's also the most ancient form of exercise that was used for medicine. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Chinese medicine worked in the opposite way of Western medicine in its paradigm, meaning that you would pay your doctor of Chinese medicine, that could be your Qigong master, your acupuncturist, your herbalist, you pay them as long as you are healthy. And as soon as you get sick, you stop paying. So this is true healthcare. We call it preventative medicine. And so people, the doctor understanding this, hey, I'm going to get paid as long as my clients are healthy, gave prescriptions for energy enlivening exercises to keep people healthy. So I love Qigong because it's empowering to us as individuals in a system and a society that doesn't necessarily care about our wellness. We really are focused on sick care. And let's face it, sick care is a big business. Pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, doctors, everybody's making money on sickness. and we need some more wellness focused practices. And that's why I love Qi Gong so much.
Yeah, beautiful. So as you were writing this, or, even thinking about this first draft, the development, early development, the seeds of this story that is now developed in Sheldon's great work into the Legend of Valentine, how did your understanding of ancient Eastern healing and practices play into your thinking about the story?
Yeah, and I just love what Sheldon has done with the story. It's just incredible. It's just such a deep dive. And I remember finishing my first draft of a screenplay and getting together with a few friends and reading it out loud. And I was like, oh my God, it sounds like a 4-year-old wrote this. It's a lot harder to write a screenplay than I imagined. And so Sheldon he was like, yeah, great job, Lee. Why don't I take this and write it into a great version? And he has. And so I'm super excited. And that's what it's all about, is this, collaboration from inspiration to ideas, the formless into the form, where we can, have a great idea, but actually now holding a copy of this book is just such a great thing for me. Well, when I was thinking about this, I was like, we have all these particular facts that we know about Saint Valentine. He was a healer, put in jail because he was marrying couples against a Roman emperor's decree. He healed the head jailer's daughter of her blindness, and that's why we write Valentine cards, because they were writing Valentine cards back and forth. I mean, there's all these incredible legends of this master healer, and I was just like, how did he become a healer? And I was just started to meditate on this idea that there must have been lots of exchange of energy and information and ideas between, places like the Roman Empire, India, China, through the Silk Road and these trading routes. And it just made sense to me that maybe he was inspired by some of these ancient practices to become the incredible man that he became.
Yeah. And then Sheldon, you picked it up from there and made some shifts.
Yeah, I mean, like Lee said, he put these little clues in his first draft that basically sent signals like, okay, kid, now go do a lot of research on this. And obviously he was, for obvious reasons, somebody I turned to in the healing arts for consulting, and then also to historical consultants to figure out how that narrative would work. And Lee hit on it earlier, was, Silk Route, there was Spice Route, there was either maritime or by land. And then there was also a lot of back and forth between people from China and India for a lot of different reasons as well, monks especially. So there's a lot of different ways that this could have happened. And so that was something I had to kind of make sure that it was plausible, which is what I was really going for when I took a deeper dive into this, and I'm still taking a deeper dive into this in the trilogy work, because there's a book 2 and book 3 coming. So it really is taking that kind of idea and going, okay, now who are these characters? Exactly what's their backstory? How did it all come about specifically? So readers don't get to that part and go, that's like New Age yoga. That didn't happen, but it's like, you got guys like Lee who have studied this all of his life. And then you have other historians who have gone into the other side of it. And actually, yeah, there's a way it could have happened. The Roman Empire was very diverse, and there was healers from all over the place. And at that time period, it reached it was one of the biggest empires ever. So, as I got into more of the research and kind of putting it together, it made a lot of sense. There were some minor changes. I mean, Lee had a character from China. That character then switched to India that was influenced from a person from China. So the idea developed and so forth. But the origins of what he, identified, by looking at a bunch of public domain and then kind of meditating on it, like he said himself, really started the whole story to come into motion, the characters to start developing. There was just a lot of genius behind identifying that idea, which I'm so thankful for Lee, setting that in motion and also collaborating with me over the years and trusting me with that idea. So it's just been a great experience.
And so Lee, I take it you're sort of the modern day Valentine. as a healer.
Well, I try to move through the world with lots of love.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He does.
And without any spoilers, there are some extraordinary healing experiences in Legend of Valentine. And I know, Sheldon, you had to make some choices about how to portray that healing. And so I would love for you and then Lee to talk about, so you talk about some of those choices, then Lee about how that fits with what you know about ancient healing modalities like Qi Gong.
Yes. So, and we do have to be careful here because we're bordering on big story spoilers. So, and Lee had mentioned some beats earlier that were kind of like, very general, big, broadly held, I would call them story points or legend points that, whatever iteration of the legend of Saint Valentine you might read through a journal, or, there is another book out there that kind of goes a completely different route with the story. You have to kind of work within that framework. And as it relates to healing, I thought it was interesting. And the version I ended up going with was to bring in a lot of the stuff that is the healing from the East, whether, Qi Gong, the Ayurvedic stuff. But I also wanted to bring in the spiritual stuff as well, because after all, Valentine became a Christian, was marrying Christians in secrecy. It was part of the first Christian movement at that time. So I thought it was kind of an interesting blend to how we get to, quote unquote, the miracle happening in the story, and help to, give some more. It allowed readers to really choose the path that they wanted to choose in terms of how everything occurred. And so it's interesting from some of the early feedback I got, some people say, oh, that's great. It was a miracle because of blah, blah, blah. I wanted to have enough there to kind of back it all up of why things happen. So readers just wouldn't sit there and go, there's no way that could have happened. So.
And then just before we toss it over to you, Lee, Sheldon, I know that there was a lot of historical research in terms of not only this aspect of the book, but also like the names of the senators and the leaders in Rome at that time. So there was a lot that you were juggling to try to maintain that accuracy and also tell a great story, right?
That was probably the hardest part, and I think I made it harder on myself as the story developed, because it went from a story that really was focused on the love story itself and the clandestine weddings that were occurring with Valentine and the healing, to then adding the political machinations that were going on in terms of the rise of the emperor and the antagonists and so forth, and just all the military attacks that were happening at that time period. It was one of those things as a storyteller that when I looked at everything as a whole, it was one of those moments I was like, wow, this all happened at this particular time period. Like, you got the legend over here, then you got like all of this happening with the rise of the emperor and how that happens at the same time period that's grounded in history. And so trying to kind of fit it all together was really like the Rubik's Cube, and I think a challenge as a storyteller. And that's why I was constantly having this tug of war relationship with my other historical consultants, especially my Italian historical consultant, who I'd be like, yeah, we're going to just throw this cool scene in right here. And they're like, but that did not happen exactly like that, exactly at that time. It was just like, but it's so cool because so it was trying to really figure out how to honor the legend and honor the history with all these different things happening, which ended up really making it this multi-storyline that, all beautifully comes together at the end. But it was a long road to get it there. We certainly didn't identify it even through the later developmental process of the screenplay when I was working with another writer, all the political stuff that was so applicable to the time period that I think gave it this really interesting depth. I think some readers will read it and it just like a little bit too much for some readers because there's a lot going on. I think the vast majority, though, who really hang tight with the story are really excited how it all weaves together, when they stick with it. So that's been really cool to see the reviews come in. And even, almost all the critics have just been, given great reviews. And I was nervous about that because I was like, oh boy, there's a lot to digest here. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Sheldon, you did such a great job of creating such an entertaining, inspiring story that is true to what actually happened at the time as best we know it. And that's kind of where I was like, gosh, how do you even find out what we know back then? You got to really dig deep. And, when I was working on the screenplay, my thinking was, this is a story that is like a cross between Gladiator and Pretty Woman. And, it's just a love story. It's got great history. It's got battles. It's got it all. And it's so entertaining and it's so inspirational. And it's about somebody who rises against adversity. And I think all of us could use a little inspiration. Now, how do we, through adversity, and still stay connected to our heart space, to our humanity, to this concept of love without getting sidetracked and really valuing those inner qualities rather than just constantly be driven by stress, greed, and fear? How can we be driven by something else? And so for me, like, again, these ancient practices, these ancient ideologies or examples of an ideology really shine through as examples to move through life with more heart.
That's beautiful.
Beautifully said.
And that is a great moment. We're going to just take a short pause and then we're going to come back and talk more about that. So hang tight.
Rome, 268 AD. In an age of tyranny and turmoil, their love will ignite a revolution. Valentine, a once fearsome warrior reborn from the brink of death, sheds his violent past for a new destiny inspired by his blind lover, Agatha. Amidst the ruthless rule of a merciless emperor, Valentine undertakes a clandestine mission to unite lovers in secret ceremonies, defying imperial decrees that threaten to obliterate the Christian faith. As Valentine's covert acts of defiance grow bolder, he challenges the tyrannical order, planting the seeds for a celebration of love that will echo through the ages, becoming the foundation of what we now cherish as Valentine's Day. The Legend of Valentine is an epic tale of love, war, faith, and rebellion. Against the backdrop of an empire in chaos, this gripping saga invites readers into a world where love defies all odds. Heroes rise from the shadows, and the undying spirit of hope shines through the darkest times. Discover the man behind the myth, witness the birth of a legend, and experience a love story so profound it promises to live forever. Are there any limits to what one man will endure for his true love? Get the audiobook now on Amplify Audiobooks.
Okay, so we were talking about moving through adversity and still holding that heart center. And this just feels like the perfect moment for Sheldon to talk about his recent experience of adversity with the LA fires. Sheldon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've it's interesting as a writer because you're always trying to get in the mind of your characters. You're trying to make your characters three-dimensional. In a story like Valentine, there's at least, they're your core 5 characters, secondary characters, you get into 10, 15. And then, of course, when you add up the whole cast, it's almost 60 characters. It's a giant epic. And, Valentine was always a tricky one because I almost had an easier time relating to, the motivations of the antagonists or some of the other secondary characters. And so to get into this character who goes through the transformation and his arc that he goes through in the story and overcomes just this tremendous amount of adversity that is hard for us to even relate to in this world, right? It's like we have to, most of us, or at least myself, I live in California, not much just happened. We live in this beautiful state, but recently in a couple of weeks, a lot has happened, right? I lost my home to the Palisades fire. I lost all my tangible goods. I lost my car. I lost everything I had I've been living off a toothbrush and 5 t-shirts for about 2 weeks. And I had to, myself just kind of get into this meditation of like, all right, what's my real relationship to those things, and are those the things really bringing me happiness in my life, or is it the people around me, my family, my friends, and so forth, and what I'm passionate about in terms of my work and stuff. And when I started to go there in my mind, it made this process easier, not to discount people that it's very difficult on, because those are my neighbors. Those are, a lot of my friends and loved ones. So I understand. I don't mean to minimize their process right now with that kind of stuff. But it was really interesting just in terms of how I was able to sit there and for the first time feel like I'm connecting more to my protagonist in the story now, because Valentine goes through just this, overcoming this tremendous adversity. And I was like, wow, there is these parallels now that were really interesting. I think that's one of the messages, like Lee said, is a very strong message of the story, is that through love, we really find ways, love, faith, and community, all 3 of those things combined are big themes in this story. I really thought about that theme all the way through. I said at the end of the day, I really want this story to be about what Lee had brilliantly started, and that is spreading the love. And you'll see that on all the social media tags that we're doing right now, spread the love. And it's really a strong message of this story. It's about spreading the love. It's about overcoming adversity. And it's really about having faith and really surrendering and accepting community, because through tough times like those things, are so important. So I'm hoping that the story is timely, not only for the people going through the wildfire situation, but just in general. There's so many people that can relate to this worldwide, no matter what they're trying to overcome right now.
Lee, anything you want to add into that piece about the overcoming, the living through adversity and spreading the love?
Man, I mean, I think, there's the external adversities like Sheldon and all our friends and family and people in Los Angeles are going through. I mean, there was friends and family that went through wildfires here in Northern California in 2020. And then there's, maybe I'll speak a little more to this, that there's just our internal adversity that we as human beings struggle with, our own inner dialogue, our own relationship with ourselves, between our consciousness and our programming and our minds and our bodies. There's a lot going on in each and every one of us. And I think, as Sheldon was saying, like reprioritizing from a externally focused mindset where the stuff is going to bring us the happiness and the value of life, and the stuff is going to bring us the fulfillment, to a little more internal approach. Of course, the stuff matters. Of course, the things in our life matters, but really those deep connections. For me, always, I think of the stuff as bringing us the energy. So if we want that new house, that new job, that new relationship's going to bring me the love that I want, that kind of formless energy. That new job is going to bring me security. We're always seeking something behind the things. And the things are fleeting, as the Eastern mystics always tell us, that the stuff is impermanent. What's not impermanent is your essential self and your consciousness, your spirit. And I think that's what, the book really helps to exemplify, that the things that we're really seeking, love, connection, community, the divine, are with us regardless of what we have in our lives.
Beautiful. So for our listeners, a really cool thing happened on the day that your books, yours most recently, Ready, Set, Slow, and Legend of Valentine, released same day. Both went to #1 bestseller. We'll toss this first to you, Sheldon. What's your response to that? What's your thoughts?
Well, it was just so exciting. I mean, Lee sent me over, his book on the #1 rating on Amazon for meditation, Ready, Set, Slow. And, I was looking at the screen at the same time with the book that we collectively have worked on here over the years, with the Legend of Valentine, #1 in classic Roman literature. So I think he sent me a message originally saying, yeah, my book went there. I said, well, you got 2 books that went there to new #1 because you've been a part of this process from the start. So it was really, really exciting to have that happen simultaneously.
Yes,
what are the odds? So,
very synchronous,
very cool.
don't you think, Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. How exciting, right? And I think it just showcases like, when you put a lot of work into something and then there's some response, it just feels really good and validating, and it's showing that these practices are striking a chord with people. And it's, in a book like Valentine, it's the practices, it's the story, it's the hard work that Sheldon's done to put this all together to make it really congruent with what happened and really relevant to what is happening. So I love that bridge.
And so I want to talk about like some some aspirations going forward in terms of Legend of Valentine. And to do that, I want to step back to where this whole thing started, where you started with a screenplay. And now we have a novel, we have a full cast audiobook that we'll be releasing on Valentine's Day. And so Sheldon, we're all wanting it to become a film too. So is that
yes. Let's drive that forward.
Only that?
Oh, we want so much.
It got really close to becoming a film in 2012, the work that Lee did. And then eventually another writer and I took the torch from there, and we further developed it. And then all of a sudden, a big production company, Robert Evans' company, stepped in at the time. Paramount stepped in, a big director stepped in. And for a moment, it just seemed like we were there. And a big $100 million movie at that time, it probably would be more than that today, was going to get made, until it didn't, because that's how Hollywood works. And so now here we are. And, I think that, one of my goals in writing it into a novel was not only because I was always wanted to take a stab at writing novels, was also because I think that getting it out to the reader market is so interesting. And there's so many movies, over 50% of movies that are period-based at least, have been proven first in a reader market. And so there's a really neat thing about being able to go directly to readers and let them decide if this is worthy of being made into a movie. I mean, the more 4 and 5 star, hopefully 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads that we get, the more that producers and marketing people in Hollywood pay attention to that, because they're looking at algorithms and of how, this all works. And really that all reflects of just the reader's experience. So it was fun to take it into a book, but it was even more fun to then direct the audiobook with you. And that was a fabulous experience co-directing with you. It was unbelievable to have such an incredible pool of talent. Oh my gosh. I mean, over 20 actors around the world who've participated in this. I know we have an upcoming podcast on that as well with a lot of the talent, but they just really brought these characters to life. And I think that I'm an audiobook enthusiast. I mean, I love listening to books I still say books on tape. They're not really on tape anymore, but I love listening to audiobooks. It's just the way I process the book better. And it's just been fun to really put all my directing background into this audiobook production and work with such talented actors. And also with you, I mean, you've had experience directing audiobooks for so many years now. And so between the both of us, I think it was just so much fun collaborating on this audiobook that releases on Valentine's Day 2025. So I'm super excited about that.
I'll just share that I also, my directing background is mostly in theater, but also have a little bit in film in the more recent years. And so, and that in combined with the audiobook direction, it's so fun to pull all that in and get to use all those skills, on a great project like this. And talking about building that audience, the audiobook, I want our listeners to know the audiobook, it's available now for pre-order on Amplify Audiobooks, and that's the place to find it, and where it will be live first on Valentine's Day. Sheldon, you want to chat about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to Amplify, first of all, it's such a cool company that you've built, Becky. For people who don't know Amplify, which I didn't know about Amplify when I first heard about it, I was first came to you guys through the production side and then learned about this whole amazing platform that you've built that really supports indie authors in a big way, allows us to also, charge fair pricing to consumers. And so it's really a great way to harness or support rather independent authors / directors of audiobooks and the listeners. And so I just made a decision to first launch it on Amplify because I want to bring more awareness to your platform, which already has a lot of listeners there, but it will be available on other platforms that people know about, like the Spotify and Audible. But I think Amplify is such an important platform for listeners to know about because it really helps artists like myself. And you guys have just done such a phenomenal job at production of this audiobook that is, coming from a film and TV background and production, this was no easy task here. You're talking about 20 actors all over the world, different time zones, all coming together on Zoom, sometimes little 15-minute or 20-minute bips to be, directed live that never would have happened 20 years ago. This would all happen in one sound studio. And so the way you guys not only casted it, but produced it, pulled it off, and now provide an outlet for listeners to go and listen to it is just fantastic. So that's my plug for Amplify and for your services with Pro Audio Voices. So thank you very much for everything you've done for this.
Absolutely. And we'll give the link in just a minute to direct our folks there. Lee, I would love to give you a chance to tell us a little bit more about your recent release, Ready, Set, Slow.
Oh, I thank you. This is another book that helps to make that bridge between ancient practices and modern life. And, what I really wanted to do was give people something very accessible, easy things to do each and every day that'll make their lives better. Because when we think about slowing down, we all kind of have an idea that, slowing down, I'll be able to do that when I retire, when I'm on vacation. And so this is going to give you little tips and tricks to bring vacation into each and every day. So you have more moments of connecting to the moment in everything that we do, whether it's working out, eating, meditating, relating with each other. Just how do we just slow down to create more beautiful moments each and every day? And the counterintuitive thing about slowing down is that it makes life better and you become more productive. It's really weird that when we're in a rush and a hurry, we get stressed out. When we're stressed out, we don't think clearly. And when we just take some time strategically throughout the day to slow down, to regroup, we get our priorities straight. We're more efficient. We're more energized because we're not holding so much contraction in our body, and life just becomes a whole lot better. So in many different ways, there's a slow revolution happening, whether it's slow food revolution, slow productivity revolution that's happening, right here in Silicon Valley, where people are actually taking time to be more mindful because it makes their workers more productive. So in the book, I have 3 sections. I have slow body, which is all these energy enlivening practices through Qi Gong, whether it's breath work or movement practices. I have slow mind. So real simple meditation types of techniques, but integrated into daily life. And then slow relationships, how to improve our connection with each other and even our intimate relationships. How do we really amplify those feel good energies that go with deeply connecting to somebody else?
Beautiful. Thank you. And would you let our listeners know what your website is so they can learn more?
I would love to. Yeah. And I teach Qigong classes at holdenqigong.com. And Qigong is spelled Qigong, holdenqigong.com. And I teach 3 classes a week live on Zoom. You can come to those. And if you don't make a class, it's always on the website. So you could take class whenever you want to at your own convenience.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Sheldon, you want to go ahead and share your website?
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I listened to one of your podcasts, Lee, on Ready, Set, Slow before the book came out. And I remember I was sitting in a restaurant eating and I was like, I got to slow it down. I'm eating too fast right now. So
that's just little reminders.
It's one of these things that, like from listening, I'm so excited to read your book. I know it just came out just a few days ago, so I can hardly wait to read it. And, as I was listening you talk about everything, I was like, it's a simple idea, but some of the simplest ideas are like actually the hardest ideas to implement in life, right? Because it's like, you can say things like just slow, but then it's like, get into like, how does that really work in my life and in how I take care of my body and my relationships and so forth. And so it's so cool to have a book like this coming out. So I'm excited to read it myself. So
Thank you.
Can hardly wait. Yeah. My landing page for The Legend of Valentine, with an audiobook, I'm sure will be on post connected to this, but otherwise, if you're having a hard time finding the book, you can go to sheldoncollins.com, my name, first name and last name, or just go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and search for The Legend of Valentine, and it will be there. And of course on Amplify.
Yep. And so The Legend of Valentine on Amplify, a quick link is bit.ly. So that's bit.ly/LOV audio. Legend of Valentine audio, LOV audio. And so I want to thank you both, Sheldon Collins, author of The Legend of Valentine, Lee Holden, Qi Gong master, and author of, most recently, Ready, Set, Slow. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Appreciate being here.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.